ICE arrests an undocumented individual who just so happens to be an Old Orchard Beach police officer, Chinese Mafia growing drugs across Maine, and Sydney Sweeney and her jeans. This week on
The New England Take.
So we got a very busy week on the New England Take, and most excitedly for me, this is the first episode of the return to WKXL. You can listen to now the New England Take on WKXL, nhtalkradio.com, 103.9 FM Concord, 101.9 in Manchester, and they'll be Saturdays, 8:30 a.m. So please go follow WKXL on all the major social media platforms. This is in addition to the Granite Grok, still sharing the episodes every week. Big supporter of these two outlets and everything they're doing and keeping media independent in New England. And going along with that independent media, I'm very excited. In the middle of the show, we will be having Steve Robinson, the editor of the Maine Wire, returning to talk about his recently released documentary that's on the Tucker Carlson Network, TCN. But before and after that, we're going to have Dexter Tarbox here. We're going to be chatting about some crazy headlines and media just craziness. There's no logic in any of it, but we're going to have fun talking about it. All right, now we're joined by Dexter Tarbox, contributor for the New England Take, a regular here that now that we're on WKXL, you're going to hear his voice probably more frequently. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, AJ. Great to be with you again.
So, fascinating story. So we were already planning talking about the whole ICE situation under Donald Trump because there's been a bunch of changes when it comes to how that's been handled. Some good, some, God, what are you doing, in my opinion? You probably have some very different takes than I do on it. But once again, the Maine Wire, I'm excited to have Steve Robinson, who's the editor over there, joining in the next segment. But ICE arrests Old Orchard Beach police officer from Jamaica for overstaying visa. And we're not talking he stayed over by a couple months. He was supposed to leave in 2023. And here we are right now with an officer of the law being arrested or detained, because we want to be correct here, by ICE. Thoughts?
Well, excuse me. I think that this story is interesting not only because it's just so incredibly shocking, but also because of the number of questions that it raises. And let me tell you, I can run through them if you'd like.
Yeah.
So number one, let's consider this. It's possible that this man, who is here illegally and was working as a sworn police officer, arrested American citizens, or at least handled evidence in criminal cases. So will those convictions be overturned or charges dropped? Will we see that coming?
Because if these people have good lawyers at all, they
certainly should. Think about another question. What other malfeasance might this man have perpetrated? He was caught by ICE when he was trying to purchase a firearm. To what end was he trying to buy a firearm for his personal use? Number three, Old Orchard Beach claims that they has compiled this massive dossier on the officer before his hiring. And that included a check on his eligibility to work in the United States. So either the E-Verify system completely failed, or Old Orchard Beach is lying about having used it, and that's something they vehemently deny. But either way, the implications are important. The Boston Herald has just reported that in this pre-hire process, he presented a Massachusetts driver's license and a Social Security card in applying for the job. How did he obtain those forms of identification? Who might have known that he was ineligible to work in the United States and thereby committed misprision by failing to report it? Friends, family, girlfriends, colleagues, people who know this person socially or personally and failed to report it. And then finally, Old Orchard Beach claims that they never would have moved forward with his hiring had they had known that he was an illegal immigrant. But a Cumberland County correctional officer, Cumberland County in Maine, was also just detained for being an illegal immigrant. So either the system has actually failed, and we need to address that at the federal level. By system, I mean the E-Verify system, the system for confirming that someone has the authorization to work in this country, or the protestations of these Maine law enforcement agencies are hollow, and they don't actually care.
Yeah, I seriously don't think they care. I mean, the whole nature of the Janet Mills administration, which thank God it's going to be done in 2026. Personally, in my opinion, like we're hitting to the end where we're finally going to have some change. Only hope there's someone with a decent head on their shoulders and is a little less of a loose cannon than LePage, as entertaining as he was occasionally. It would be great to have some solid policies, and when we talk about in the next segment, once again with Steve Robinson talking about the marijuana issue that they have up there, where there's literally Chinese mafia coming in, buying property, and it's not catching any red flags with the Secretary of State or anything of that nature. And now you're seeing this where the E-Verify system is probably not being used, or if they're running it, they're just throwing it in the file in case they need it for down the road alibi, saying like this, like we ran it. What I cannot imagine with the nature of how politicized everything is from the left, and when it comes to anything government related in the state of Maine, where I can't trust them. Like, how can you trust with everything else that's been going on, especially in the southern part of the state? I mean, there's a lot of very traditionalist people up in the north, but you get anywhere else, you really should be having some questions going on in your head.
Well, you mentioned the Maine Secretary of State, who, of course, is Shayna Bellows, who very famously tried to remove Trump from the ballot and was defeated ultimately in that effort. She now has aspirations to replace Janet Mills as governor, and Janet Mills, at least as it's reported, has aspirations to become a senator. So these people are seeking promotions.
Yeah, this is not getting fixed unless there's this total overthrow with some statewide elections that are going to be happening soon. And I mean, say what you will about ICE. We'll dive into that for just a couple minutes here specifically. Would like how do we there's a level of where you need to learn to just deal with the craziness that's coming from the Trump administration, because things like this are happening and being totally ignored. I've said my issues with the way they've handled a lot of the Palestinian movement and stuff on college campuses, whatever. But when you turn around and you see all these other issues going on, like, yeah, we should be opening our eyes and being okay with ICE coming into communities and fixing issues where you have literal police officers or law enforcement officers from two different government-related agencies have now been found to be illegal immigrants here in the country, which means there's going to be all sorts of issues, like we said earlier, about whether these cases are going to hold up. Are there going to be issues when it comes to abuse that are going to come back and hit the corrections department and going to cost them an ungodly amount of money? I mean, there's so many things that could be opened up from this.
Well, it's true that I think I'd hasten to add that even the Trump administration and some of the biggest hawks on the issue of deportation would agree with you in drawing the line between non-criminal deportations and deportations of people who are here and committing felonies. This is a case that straddles that line because, of course, he didn't commit a felony, at least not that I understand, perhaps under Maine law, but he assumed the mantle of a sworn law enforcement officer, and he's not the first in the state of Maine. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, there's reporting that the Healy administration is actively recruiting non-citizens to serve in law enforcement. There are, in fact, over a dozen states that allow it. He obtained his Massachusetts driver's license there. So there are systemic issues which are not overtly criminal. These are not rapes and murders and pillages, but that are incredibly serious. So while I agree that there is a line to be drawn, again, I believe the administration would draw the same line. There are gray areas like this which really need to be considered. And that's why I think that the more broad sweeping tactics that ICE has employed probably are called for.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like even personally, I get upset seeing the ICE officers come out fully masked and in civilian clothes and things of that nature.
River.
I know. I mean, when you see on the other side of it, you see all the death threats and doxing attempts. Yeah, world's smallest violin. I get it.
I was fiddling. Yeah.
Yes, it's my libertarian heart bleeds occasionally. Lefty. I'm sorry, but when you see all the issues that haven't been addressed and the death threats that are happening against ICE, because we're having the same sort of issue we had post George Floyd, where now the police are out to kill everybody and deport everyone, that's whether they're here legally or illegally, and all these sorts of crazy things coming from it. Like, ICE needs to defend themselves personally and their families from the craziest of crazy that's out there. When you hear
Well,
about such crazy headlines of doxings and possible attacks and things of that nature, like, you gotta meet in the middle here.
well, hence the masking. I mean, the
Yeah.
masking of ICE officers serves no other purpose than to prevent retribution against them and their families by lunatics. In Virginia, just the other day, a Republican city council member was doused with gasoline and lit on fire at his professional office, his office for his private job. To suspect the motivations of ICE for masking themselves in such a heated political climate, I think just seems crazy. It seems entirely justified to me that they are protecting their identities and carrying out their lawful duties.
All right. We're gonna end this topic here, and we're gonna throw it over to Steve Robinson of the Maine Wire. Excited right now to be joined by Steve Robinson. He is the over at the Maine Wire, and he was on the show a couple months ago talking about crazy audit story that you should definitely check out on our YouTube channel. But this time, exciting news that's really blown up on social media, especially, and beginning to get a lot of coverage now in the national media, is Chinese drug issues, where they're purchasing property and doing illegal marijuana grows across the state of Maine. Steve, welcome back to the show, and give the elevator pitch for this documentary that was just released on the Tucker Carlson network.
Yeah, well, AJ, thanks for having me. I think that the baseline story is that Chinese drug cartels have infiltrated rural America, and it's happening from coast to coast. It's happening in Washington State, California, Oklahoma, and because Massachusetts and Maine both legalized adult use cannabis around the same time, the same organizations that took advantage of those other states have come to New England now. And the basic model is that they come in with large amounts of capital from their other criminal rackets, and they purchase residential homes, commercial properties, multifamily homes, and they renovate them, gut them, turn them into maximally efficient marijuana grows, and then they traffic that marijuana throughout the United States, selling it illegally, sometimes by diverting it into other legal marijuana programs in, for example, New York, but oftentimes selling it on the black market completely illegally, and sometimes exploiting the so-called hemp loophole. You'll find this marijuana being sold at gas stations or head shops or tobacco shops labeled as THCA or THCP, but in fact, it's regular old intoxicating cannabis. And we learned 4 weeks ago from an indictment that was filed in the District of Massachusetts, where 7 of these individuals were indicted and 6 of them arrested, one still on the lam. We learned that this organization utilizes human trafficking. According to that indictment filed by U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Leah Foley, the ringleader of the organization, coordinated the smuggling of at least one individual from China into Mexico over the border under the Biden presidency, and arranged for them to fly to New England. Once that individual was in New England, the ringleader of the organization stole their passport, put it in a safe, and brought them to a cannabis grow house and effectively said, you need to work off your smuggling debt by growing marijuana, tending to marijuana, if you want your passport back. And that's one concrete example of a phenomenon that we found evidence of throughout our 2-year-long investigation into Chinese drug cartels, which is that the workers who are often seen at these sites by neighbors and locals and are sometimes arrested when law enforcement executes search warrants are victims themselves, victims of human trafficking. So we're dealing with, I would say, a totally amoral, venal, evil criminal organization that is exploiting American naivete and our way of life, our culture, and our lax marijuana laws in order to amass a significant amount of money, cash, behind America's borders. And the real lingering question is, what exactly are they planning with all of that money? Because they do occasionally drive expensive cars and wear $75,000 Rolexes, but by and large, we still don't know exactly what their plans are for all of that money.
Yeah, I mean, this is really goes to show the impact of bad, not well thought out laws really can have an impact of enabling crime. And anytime you have these foreign criminal organizations, they're not just doing one thing. I mean, like you just brought up, when it came to the human trafficking is a huge part of it. It invites all sorts of other, like, money laundering, fraud, taking advantage of the community in so many different ways that you don't think about offhand, but the longer they're there, the more they're able to capitalize on the talents they get into government, business, property, all sorts of things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to think about organized crime is that it's just a business.
Yeah.
It's hierarchical. There's bosses, there's managers, there's peons, there's, a profit model, there's a business plan. And in this case, there was a business plan that they'd honed to perfection in Washington State, California, and Oklahoma. And they brought that plan and even some of the same personnel to New England. And there's a little bit of a learning curve trying to figure out the climate and the unique regulatory environment that they were operating in Maine. But they became very professional at that operation. They're very strategic and they're very cunning. They knew that they would be able to blend in rural communities where legal cannabis growing was already happening. They're very adept at suddenly losing their ability to speak English if they're questioned by law enforcement or a local code enforcement officer. And they also have sophisticated systems set up to help them launder money. Marijuana, thanks to its federal illegality, is a cash business, whether you're a Chinese drug cartel or a business, a regulated, licensed business trying to do things legally in Massachusetts or in Maine. So this is an all-cash business. And in the case of the Chinese organizations, that's dirty cash that they need to figure out a way to clean and get it into the banking system if they're looking to move it around the country. Moving large volumes of cash throughout New England in many cases is more dangerous than just moving, say, 200 pounds of marijuana in a U-Haul vehicle for them. And so they do this through cash-heavy businesses, whether that's massage parlors, restaurants, pool halls, gambling institutions, casinos. There are a number of different seemingly legitimate businesses that are in fact fronts for this dirty cannabis money to be laundered so that they can use it for other purposes.
Which makes it especially bad when you hear about the implications of the Mills family possibly being involved in some level, at least in the real estate side, according to some of your reporting.
Yeah, this was, I think, one of the more shocking things that we found in the course of our reporting. And from the beginning of this story, when we started looking into it, it began with this leaked federal memo that said that there were 270 locations in Maine controlled by Asian transnational criminal organizations that were involved in growing black market marijuana. And the original memo didn't include any addresses or names. It was really just an email saying that this was happening in Maine and it was happening in a big way. And so after seeing that leaked memo reported on by Jenny Tare from the Daily Caller News Foundation, I went to work trying to see if I could identify these sites and find these sites. And at this point, I've found, I would say, between 350 and 400 locations that are controlled by different Chinese criminal organizations. I think you're looking at several different families or organizations that are kind of have divvied up the territory here in New England. And the organizations are they're gravitating towards marijuana because it's a low risk activity. If somebody is arrested with a kilo of fentanyl in Maine, that's going to be a big story, and the police are going to put that person in an interrogation room. They're going to sweat them. They're going to try to figure out who their supplier is. They're going to threaten them with 25 years in prison if they don't start talking about where that came from. They're going to investigate, but if you swap that out for 20 pounds of marijuana, well, the police officer is probably going to get laughed at if he tells his colleagues that he just made a big marijuana bust. So it's a low risk activity for these criminal organizations to be engaged in, but they are making a tremendous amount of money. They're able to sell this oftentimes through Maine's under-regulated medicinal marijuana program, but they've been doing it at such a high volume, they've actually collapsed the price for legal marijuana here in the state. And so it's only natural that they would want to find other markets, like at the hemp shops or tobacco shops, selling it as hemp for a significant markup, or selling it just totally on the black market, because you can get a black market premium that's 3 to 4 times the price that you would fetch selling it through a legal dispensary here in the state of Maine. So for the cost of having one of their indentured servants load a U-Haul van and drive it to North Carolina or South Carolina or some other state where marijuana still remains illegal at the state level, they can triple or quadruple the price that they're getting for their product.
All right. Be sure to check out the mainwire.com for all the reporting on this. There's a ton over there. And also definitely check out the new documentary, High Crimes, the Chinese Mafia's Takeover of Rural America, that's available on tuckercarlson.com. Steve Robinson, thank you again for joining the show. Fantastic reporting. And hopefully this gets more and more coverage, and hopefully some policy changes down the road to make sure this is ended.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right, we're back here with Dexter Tarbox here for the last segment, and we're going to talk about Sydney Sweeney and her fantastic jeans that she has worn all over all over the news. What's kind of hilarious I discovered about this today is this advertising campaign has been going on for several months and no one realized it until all the lefty people got really angry about it, because they assume all sorts of racism and eugenics and all sorts of terribleness that we'll talk about some specific crazy quotes that I found. But when I saw the ad, I'm like, oh, we're in the 90s again. It's like, oh, it's back when I was in high school and early in the aughts when people were, these were the ads. This is what American Eagle is known for. So this is an advertising campaign that American Eagle has going on. They have Sydney Sweeney, and her, she always looks like she's kind of high. I'm sorry, it's her shtick that she has, partly because she got famous for being in Euphoria, which was an HBO show. But I
thought she was a singer.
No.
I told you this morning, AJ, I had no idea who this woman was until
I'm here to open your horizons to terrible pop culture, Dexter, and I'm the last person to do that, so God help everyone listening to this show for getting useful information outside of politics when it comes to it. But no, she's an actress. She was in the Spider-Woman movie that came out a couple years ago. That's where she really started to really blow up, because she has very pretty eyes, and I think everyone who knows who I'm talking about knows I'm not talking about her eyes.
How could I have missed the Spider-Man movie?
Yeah, I know. It was there basically as a joke. It was like the Morpheus movie. It became a meme and became nothing about the actual movie itself. That was the Spider-Woman movie, and basically everyone has been saying since then the greatest thing we got from the Spider-Woman movie is everyone realized who Sydney Sweeney was, because she got all sorts of modeling contracts and acting gigs and a couple rom-coms after that. But I mean, I really had, I asked you the other day, because another thing you're not involved with is LinkedIn, and I decided to play a thought experiment, and by thought experiment, I meant I'm going to talk smack on LinkedIn in someone's professional feed to see what happens. And this membership development person at some organizations, doesn't matter, I'm not going to list anyone's names here because it's irrelevant, but she literally was saying it misses the mark over and over again. Great Genes sparked valid criticism for its racial tone deafness, especially paired with white blonde spokesperson. Even a charitable angle supporting domestic violence awareness was eclipsed by the genetic idealism baked into the messaging. Thoughts?
Oh, good Lord. Again, I don't know who she is, but I can give you my top line thought on this as a campaign, because two things can be true at once, as far as I'm concerned. On the one hand, these hysterics, like you're just quoting, from the likes of the Atlantic magazine editors and the sort of Mother Jonesians of the world, are pure silliness, and the flame out is fantastic to watch. But on the other hand, at least as I see it, these clearly seem to be very savvy marketers who absolutely knew that they would stir controversy by this, because this level of publicity is never a bad thing, and the market is bearing that out. You can see it in the stock price of the company. And my hope is just that they don't apologize. Well, precisely, exactly. You're drawing eyes to it by, and there are innumerable examples of companies or individuals using negative, I guess, publicity to bolster their image. Again, as I say, it's never a bad thing to have this level of publicity. My sincere hope.
Their stock price has gone up 10% from this. It started to go down a little bit, but 10% based off what they spent off, that's huge for them in the long run. People and the detractors are going to say, well, it doesn't mean they increase sales per se. It doesn't matter. If you're able to get your stock price up 10%, the implications of that, the investor possibilities, the liquid cash that could be infused in the organization to go in greater things is huge. And this person that I commented on here, which, by the way, my comment saying it was crazy, and I basically equated her to giving a gender studies 101 course description of this advertising campaign with a bombshell, basically, is what it comes down to. I got 35,000 impressions off of it. Like, it just triggered every 25 to 45-year-old professional. Totally was triggered by this. Guess what, ladies? And almost all women. The few guys that were involved all were liking my comments. I'm going to say that. And even a lot of women were liking my comments in this back and forth, which is crazy. You're not the demographic. It's American Eagle. They're looking for people that are 15 to 25. If you're a 35-year-old professional, they're not selling you jeans. They're looking to get the youngins that are saying, ooh, look how hot she is. I want to dress like that. I mean, that's the nature of clothes marketing. And it's crazy to see these fashion designer types not realize the importance of that demographic and how it's very different. They assume everyone has this gender critical thinking lens with everything that's going on. People do not, especially 15 to 25.
Well, let me tell you, you're exactly right, and there's research that backs up what you're saying. So I do suspect that this reflects sort of a broader culture shift in corporate marketing, because new Pew Research polling came out. It was either today or yesterday, and this is Thursday. That shows there's a massive rightward swing among Gen Z men mostly, but also women. And it represents to me a clear kind of cultural backlash against that woke media, which they've been force-fed essentially since birth. And as you say, those are, after all, the consumers who these brands are trying to reach, 18 to 29. And I think right now they're speaking exactly the right language.
Yeah, people are sick of it. I mean, the whole reason why Trump got half the country to vote for him is because people are sick of it. When you see the makeup of Congress, even some of the Democrats that are put into office in kind of purpley districts it goes to show that they're sick of it. People want to be able to move on and enjoy life without having to make sure that they're not stepping on a cultural landmine every time they open their YouTube videos and get an ad or something like that. We got 1 minute left here, Dexter. Any closing remarks on this?
Well, again, with Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle, I hope they do not apologize. I think they should embrace what they've done and continue to push forward. And as I say, I hope it is a reflection of a broader shift.
I agree. All right. NewEnglandTake.com to check out more of what the show's up to. We do have a Substack over there if you feel like throwing me a couple bucks or getting our shows for free to your email. We are there. Also, YouTube, all the major podcast platforms, we're there. Big thank you again to WKXL for picking up the show again. Saturdays, 8:30 a.m. Next up, if you're over there, it's going to be Facing the Future with the Conquer Coalition. A super interesting show that they've been doing for many years over there. And thank you again to the Granite Grok, which picks up the show every Saturday over there. All right, NewEnglandTake.com. We'll talk to you soon.